welcome to the Finance Story, and I'm your host Vishal Krishna. We are a leading digital publication that celebrates and captures life in finance. Our series, titled Finance 2022 and Beyond, powered by Capita, aims to inspire young and old CEOs and employees alike. There is a new world order out there thanks to COVID-19, and we all know how it's realigned businesses and how it's become a world of opportunity for many of us. Digital is the name of the game, and the role of finance has also changed with it. Today, financiers and finance professionals need to look at a world that has converged onto a smartphone while the industry still continues to grapple with its physical legacy. Changing physical legacy is my friend from NoBroker and co-founder, of course, Amit Kumar Agarwal. Amit has a great resume. I must talk about that resume. He graduated from IIT Kanpur and finished his MBA in finance from IIM-Ahmedabad. He has worked in ANZ and PwC Bank before starting NoBroker. The rest is history. As they say in the media, they're now a unicorn. How are you, Amit?
Good. Thank you. Great meeting you once again.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. Let's talk about your career in finance, because that's something that I don't know. So do you have a family history of finance? And let's then talk about your journey from that bank to, or the big four that you joined, and then you started up to NoBroker.
So I think engineering was basically something which happened because my marks in the 10th was good. I was among the top 20 toppers in UP State Board, and hence, so if you are good in studies, then you try for IIT. So that was more of a something which everybody is doing and something which is difficult and you pursue. I think I basically realized that I have to do MBA because I don't want to. Coding is not something which basically gave me a kick up.
Absolutely. You were in a software firm for a couple of years. I know that.
Yeah. So I was there in CTS for 2 years. So I think coding was fun. There's no doubt, but it did not give me that kick, which I was basically hoping for the longer term. And basically, once I came into once I joined IIM-Ahmedabad, I think among all the subjects, finance attracted me the most. It's very analytical. It has something to do with money.
Okay. At what stage did you know that in MBA Finance, right? I mean, when did you know that that's the subject that you wanted? Was it a certain experience?
No, I think early stage itself, I basically felt that appealed more of a engineering/analytical brain of mine. So compared to any other subject, I think that's what. And IT anyway, I had done marketing. I was not so interested. Yeah.
It's a rare combination for somebody to know coding and have finance as a background, right? It makes it very powerful. So you got picked up in one of the top four. You went to PwC at the time.
Yeah.
And how was that experience? You want to quickly talk about it. And then you went to a bank.
Correct.
Go for it. I mean, tell me what happened at that period of time. What are the learnings for you?
So PwC Management Consulting, I was there for almost 10 years. PwC, of course, the big audit firms are known much more for their audit work and tax work. But it also basically had a management consulting division. Within that, I was in a particular niche, which had a very small team. I think the entire team across consulting was barely 35-40 people, but a very premium sector within PwC, charging very good rates. And we basically I was placed in the financial services vertical, banking and financial services vertical. And I consulted banks and financial institutions for the next 10 years. So be it assessing risk, be it improving revenue, reducing cost, any go-to-market strategy, there was a change in customer revolution in terms of how you service the customers from a PSU bank setup to the private sector. So that entire 10-12 years I did. And then joining a bank was basically a natural progression. And then basically I joined Australian New Zealand Bank as a head of strategy, reporting to the CEO. Yeah.
That's it. I'll tell you now, with such rich experience, right? I mean, you could have gone abroad. You did not want to. But then a certain experience with all of you, all the founders, where you couldn't find homes, you decided to go set up NoBroker. Did your family get a shock of their lifetime, saying, why is he doing something around, working with brokers or not working with brokers?
In terms of whether you should leave so ANZ Bank was a very, very comfortable job, very good work-life balance, high-paying job, not much work to do. So it was a very comfortable life. And I basically felt that the way forward would be to just basically change jobs, go from one bank to another, go from to a European bank or a Japanese bank, and basically keep on doing that. So it is not, it's not a basically idea which is borrowed from somewhere. So we are not Amazon or a Uber equivalent of anywhere else. So the beauty of the idea is that it basically is a very commonsensical thing to ask. And the question is as follows: that if I can send a friend request to anybody in the world through Facebook, through Facebook, or through any social media, then why can't I connect with the owner on internet? Why do I need this physical person, and why should I pay a huge amount of brokerage? So this was our question. And when we saw some new age technology companies in real estate launching, we were very hopeful that, okay, now this problem will be solved. But again, we saw that there are good photos, good Google Maps, but finally there's a broker on the other end. So we were like, hey, but use the full power of internet and connect both the parties together. But that was not done. And somehow it has still not been done anywhere in the world. So we are not only India's largest, we are world's largest non-brokerage company. And we have not been able to answer this question for the past 7 years, why nobody else in the world is doing at this scale, except perhaps from this reality that it's very difficult to build C2C business, because you need a house on the same road, on the same, for the same BHK, for the same rent amount that the tenant wants. So it's a micro locality matchmaking and marriage, which is very difficult. So it takes years. Perhaps that's the reason. But I think, so idea, yes, I had a finance background. Yes, I had banking financial services, and I had zero experience in real estate. But idea basically came from this innocent question asking that why can't we work without paying this huge brokerage? And we took it from there. We felt that, hey, this makes sense. So will it work? Yeah, of course it should work. Just ask a couple of friends, ask some people around, and people felt, yes, this is a problem. So did I do a huge amount of work to leave my job? No. Should I have done that? Perhaps yes. Did we do a lot of studies after I left my job? Yes, we did, to recalibrate the idea and then to get more further insights on it. So what I did was a little more rash. I basically felt this is a good idea, and I just took a jump towards it. But I personally think it's perfectly okay to continue with your job, work in late evenings and weekends, and then basically refine your idea further, because this financial pressure which I took of leaving job and then spending money and still paying EMIs is little difficult, right? And makes your life a little bit more difficult. Yeah. Thankfully, my parents were very supportive, because we are Agarwals, and in our family, we have done business. So we are not that scared of doing business. But, so my father said that I am perfectly okay. If you don't do something for the next 2 years, you want my support, I'll support you. Don't worry. Yeah.
That's an interesting dad. I wish we had dads like that, but that's wonderful. You came into Bangalore, right? That's how it started.
Yeah.
Talk about the experience. I want you to bring in your other co-founders in the picture, Akhil also. How did it happen? I mean, how did you guys meet?
So Saurabh is basically my batchmate from IIM-Ahmedabad, same dorm, same floor. So that was very good. We had anyway known us for so many years. Akhil is a junior from IIT. So we three had kept on basically meeting over years. We three had shifted cities. So all three of us had basically gone through this pain of paying a very high brokerage, meeting very low quality brokers with poor customer experience. So this concept of non-brokerage resonated with all three of us, and with our especially with our personal experiences.
And your personal experiences were true. And in 2014, when you started up, I remember at the time, like you told me many times, as in our many meetings, that finding a space for yourself, right? In a sense, there was others who had started these classifieds, right? And they were raising money at the time, and a lot of people said, what are you doing in this journey? You're no different. Fundamentally, how did it change?
So you are one of the few people who distinctly remember those phases. Otherwise, most of the people don't. And it seemed like a continuous story, but of course it had that huge up and down, and then a huge lull, which we'll talk about. So of course, so when we started, as you just mentioned, that we basically had a broker attack on our office, which was very surprising. But in Bangalore city, which is so full of startup, it was very difficult. So some 50, 60 brokers came and we thought there's some procession which is going on, but no, they basically came to break our office and beat our employees. And their objective was to just instigate and damage things, because they thought they did not have a concept of a cloud. So they thought if they break the laptops, then the company is gone. And and when we basically approached police, finally police took us in the van, and the brokers were still there in the office. So of course they were more pally with the local brokers than with us. But eventually we had to vacate the office because they were chasing the women employees and they were damaging the bikes parked outside. So of course it was a lot of nuisance at that point of time. But yes, the team did basically bring itself together. So lots of customers writing a lot in terms of our support. So that was good. So in terms of the funding, I think our funding journey has been very difficult. So that's the truth. so even in so when we're raising our first round, you are anywhere aware that great players with good founders, Common Flow, 10 Acres, Magic Bricks, Housing, all of them good companies with established track record. They were there, so we were not getting funding. Once we got funding, housing.com imploded. But then again, we were not getting funding. So nobody in India was ready to touch us. So with the help of Teru Sato, who is a BNext founder, he was the one I think who came to our rescue along with Elevation, earlier known as SAF. And then we went around, we met individual investors in Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and basically we gathered what we could. So for the first year, apart from one or two basically raise to survive, it was extremely difficult to raise money. And I would say we were very innocent. So I was basically listening to someone, and someone said that between being extremely intelligent and being extremely innocent, you need a right combination. If you're very intelligent, you will have a paralysis of action because you are aware about every con and you just can't take any action. So I think we were also pretty innocent. We did not truly fathom the power of huge funding that competitors can raise and have raised, and that impact on us. We put our blinders. We said, hey, we have no idea what is happening outside. And Nestaway was also a very good company, which also raised huge amount of money. So everybody was raising money except us. So everybody, Nestaway, Housing, everybody, even so Grab House. We basically said, okay, we can't do anything. Nobody is giving us money. We can only do our work. So we would basically pour ourselves completely to work. And somehow over years, what happened was that the commonsensical approach, which is basically being frugal, not spending money unless you see a good ROI, just focusing on customers and having patience of keep on. So somebody had told me that when you are an employee, you want to learn new things. In consulting, I wanted to learn new assignments. The difference between employee and employer is that employee wants to learn new things every day. Employer just wants to learn one good thing and just wants to replicate it 1,000 times. He doesn't want to learn new things because then when will he scale? So I think our approach had been that we just will do repeat. Whatever we did yesterday, we are again going to do today with, of course, minor learning that we have achieved.
And be consistent with everything. Yes.
So today, after we have raised 3,500 crore of money, when people ask us as to what is it that we did different, we are saying we did exactly same. You take our pitch deck of 2015, it is same as today. Many of the slides are common. We have been just doing the same thing again and again and again. And I think over time, the numbers basically became very big. So now we add 5 lakh new customers per month. Our cumulative customer base is 1.6 crore. So now the network effect is pretty big. We add
more than what, 100, more than 200 cities? How many cities are you in now?
No, cities, we are only 6 cities. So
that's great. That's hyper focused. Yeah, correct. Right. Again, guys, hyper focus of 6 cities. That's Amit for you. He's super frugal. And you mentioned, right, in the early days, I want to ask you, did you ever put in your own money for the first few months in 2014?
No, of course. So not just few months, for more than a year, me, Akhil and Saurav, we put in our own money. I had left my job. Akhil and Saurav was still continuing with their initiative. So financially, it was pretty difficult for me specifically because business needed some money, marketing needed money, even flight tickets to meet investors needed money. and I was not earning anything. So the money depletes very fast. We were expecting we were expecting our kids. So my wife had to join the job back quickly because we need something to pay the EMIs also.
It's not an easy job. I will talk about entrepreneurship and its struggles, but that feeling, I mean, tell me, how's that feeling like? I mean, I know you don't like it, but in terms of saying unicorn, which everybody says, right? And the Tiger Global funding happened last year around October, November. What changed? A lot more media people calling you?
Of course, and I can basically sense a perceptible difference in the respect that we were getting earlier to today, although we are doing still the same stuff. Uh, to me, raising $210 million is much more important than being unicorn, because for me to get a fuel to grow further is much more important. So we would have been okay if we raised $210 million at $950 million valuation. But when I have noticed the reaction of my teammates, that has been out of the world. So they are extremely happy because I think over time media has basically made this $1 billion a very important milestone. So it has been created, and hence now it is being celebrated. Yeah. So, but the team is extremely happy, and it has given
a lot of them stayed with you, in the toughest of times.
Yes. So we basically we did some secondary of ESOPs for some of our employees, and people who have, and I was telling somebody that ESOPs are also basically like fruits or seeds, right? That you just allow the tree to grow and basically blossom fully, and then you can see within 5 years how much it multiplies. So people have stayed with us for 5 years, and there are huge, many number of them. Their wealth basically is creation is humongous.
So I want to talk about now the finance profession itself. When did you hire your first CFO? Were you the CFO in the early days? Were all of you playing around with different roles? Talk about that entire journey of creating a team and a finance team, including bringing in the CFO.
Because effectively we are a first generation entrepreneurs, and we had no idea. So the thought process which many of the founders use, which I also used, was, is there enough work for the HR person full day, or for the finance person full day? The work was not there in the initial 6 months. But I quickly realized, thankfully, within few months, that it doesn't matter. You need experts, because the value that they will add is much, much more. And over time, the work will basically get expanded, and then it will become a full-time job. So in the initial few years, we basically hired junior finance guys, and our experience was pretty bad with them, because ideally what you should do is you should hire the senior guy first. And then basically ask the senior guy to hire the guys which he think are right, because we didn't even know how to interview, right? We would basically ask our investors, give us a couple of questions for tally, and we will ask those questions from the finance guy. What are the shortcuts in tally? That's what we did. Thankfully, after that, we hired Ashish Shan, who basically acts as our finance head today. And we hired him from ITC. And we use the help of our investors to interview on technical stuff, and he has basically done amazing job in NoBroker. He completed, I think recently crossed 4 years with us, and amazing fellow.
Okay, this is an important question for you. For like you said, every startup founder must know when to hire a CFO, perhaps a few month delay. I want you to tell me what makes a good startup CFO. How do you know that this person is good? And they perhaps give the CFO org to an outsourced firm or something of that sort. Right? But what makes a good startup CFO?
So I would say that let's think about, what does a CFO do? Among all the activities that basically he does, you can classify all those activities into two main buckets, which is that a CFO or a finance head manages cash and information. Everything that he does, you can classify into two things. Either he's managing cash, or he's managing information be it for investors, for regulators, for filings.
Yeah.
So these are basically the two main pillars that he handles, which you can use, which you can talk about when you interview somebody. But I would say for a startup, the clinching thing after these two prerequisites are fulfilled is the intent. intent of the person, which is valid for other roles also within the startup, intent of the person is to get that 30-40% increment, which we are offering, which any startup is offering, or the intent is to basically get genuinely bigger, meatier role and be okay with huge amount of chaos. That I would say is the main thing.
And you would say work on a consulting basis with them first before you hire them? Is that better?
No, I think so. That I have not tried, and I think it's a very personal choice and depends upon the person whom you hire. What we did was that we hired Ashish basically at a mid-level role, and then he himself grew in that role, and we
Very
got
nice.
promoted. Yeah.
There are several things that you did that led you to the status that you're at today. I want to know that how did you create steps of ESOPs? Like you said, you did a secondary. How did that motivate employees? So how do you manage that organization role? You set up the finance team. You guys are building the technology and the early sales, managing every stakeholder. How do you manage so many pieces as a founder, Amit? Employees on one level, new leaders on one level. How do you manage that entire gamut of things to become a unicorn?
So I would say the transformation which I had to undergo very quickly after I started. See, because the first 1 year was all bootstrapping, so no office, nothing, 3 people doing the job. And then it became, the first office, that getting the first office. Then I was focused on doing everything on my own, and that basically led to a phase where I felt that I can do everything. I can do HR, I can do finance, and basically I can do everything. But then I think after this HR and finance, basically HR, finance, handling employees, reviewing things, everything I was doing on my own. So you would not believe that me and Akhil, we had this template, and Word document template will change name, change salary, and take a printout and send it. That's how we were generating. And the initial 6 months was that, hey, I can do everything. Why do I need a finance person, or why do I need a HR person? And then thankfully, I quickly realized that I cannot. And if I do, then the company will be very small. And you need people who are better than you and who are expert. And you don't need to over worry whether the person will be fully occupied or not, because there might be many things that you have no idea and you are missing, or you are not filing, or you are not doing. And hence there's a huge cost of not doing many things just because you are not aware. And you need some person to basically look at it. So earlier, when we hired the junior finance executive, which I think was a very bad decision. And finally we came to Ashish. And once Ashish was there, a finance guy was there, then he basically took over. He told us lots of things which we were supposed to file, which supposed to do, and we had not done it. And we're like, tum dekh lo bhaiya kya karna hai. And then slowly, then he started hiring junior people. He also learned here. I think also hired some people who were not that good. Then he changed. And the amazing thing which basically happened is that for any finance person who is coming from a established company like ITC, where there's a huge hierarchy within finance itself, for that person to basically change himself to much more action oriented theme of a startup, where where he can't look up to somebody or he can't ask somebody any question, that has been difficult. And as you know that on a practical basis, working in India, running business in India requires you to liaison with everybody, municipality, police, and labor department, and PF department, and income tax, and all of those things. Basically, Ashish then had to learn how to manage all those functions. Which basically,
so he did that for you. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So you could, so in a way, all of you grew together. This is phenomenal. Now I want to come to the co-founders, right? Aren't you glad that you have co-founders? Because if you were alone, I think NoBroker would have been a difficult piece to solve, right? If either of you were alone, let me rephrase that, right? How did you guys manage, and especially the technology side, when you get these product managers, how did you manage that?
No, so you are absolutely right. So we are very lucky to basically have, I personally think that having co-founders is a huge plus. It may seem that if you're the only founder, then you can take decisions and nobody's there to question you. But the truth is that the journey of a founder is very difficult. I would say that almost every founder is unsure, scared, very, very unsure about how things are going to pan out, because everything is basically dependent on some other factor, right? And And when you have co-founders, you can share your insecurities with them, you can share your fears with them, and you can discuss, and then you can move to action faster. So that has always been a huge plus.
The early product was built by Akhil.
Yeah,
Oh, you
yeah.
built it together.
Akhil is a techie. Akhil built the product.
I must ask him that story separately and how he struggled or how did he handle it? Did you guys give inputs? Would you go to the market and get inputs and then say build the product? How did that happen?
So earlier in the first 6 months, 1 year, it was extremely collaborative because we will talk to customers, then he will make something. Whatever he makes, we'll find some fault, we'll give some suggestion, and then again we'll discuss. So initially 6 months, 1 year was extremely consultative and extremely to and fro. But then we started basically settling into our own work. So Akhil started looking at technology fully. I started looking at business, sales, and operations.
Okay.
And Saurav started looking at marketing. So then we had our bigger piece, and then the main technology piece basically had a basic structure. And the refinements, Akhil is very good at it. So he kept on basically doing it.
No, lovely. I think you guys make a wonderful trio. This question is surrounded around can finance guys build great products? That's the most important thing. Can they become startup founders? And finally, what advice would you give these finance professionals while running a startup?
So I would say that, of course, many of the finance guys can become co-founders. They can have companies, and many of them do already. The advantage of basically a finance guy leading a business is that he's much more attuned towards economic realities, which many of the other founders then need to learn. The first question which which an investor would ask apart from the product is, what is your unit economics? How is basically things are going to pan out 1 year, 2 year, 5 years down the line? So all those advantages, how basically balance sheet and P&L work together, how margins work together, and how things can pan out, a finance guy has a great understanding of, and which investors basically love. It would of course make sense that if the business is a tech oriented or tech enabled business, then of course it makes sense to have a tech co-founder who can basically then
Makes your life easier.
Yeah.
Right, Amit, I want to conclude this by saying one thing, right? Did you ever think it would become this big?
Being a unicorn, etc., I think is much more of an afterthought, because if you just turn back 5 years, there were barely any unicorns. I think our objective was that the mind started saying that, hey, can I avoid a broker? Can I save brokerage? Does a company make sense? Once we started that, then it became about, hey, can we convince some other guys, investors or employees who can join us in the journey? Once it became that, then the problem was all about how can we solve this problem more efficiently? We are able to solve problem for this city, but not for that city. Can we do that? Can we basically have more ancillary items which customer need, rental agreement, legal documentation, home loan? So I think it was more about solving something, proving it to ourselves that we can, learning, then listening to customers who are unhappy with what we were doing, then improving on it. So, and I think unicorn and valuation is, of course, it's a basically
Celebration. That's it.
Yeah, sure. So I would say two things. One is about this, and one I would also want to make some closing comments about our experience with overall with finance function. I would basically say to any audience basically who is listening that view finance as an expertise function, and never ever commit a mistake of saying that you can be a semi-expert in something which requires years of training, just like an engineer does. And having a good finance person in your team is basically like having a good founding member in your team who would make sure that the basic structure of the company is rock solid and will prepare the company for any problems which are going to come in the future, and they will come, right? From GST to income tax and so on. And these are complex things, but a good finance person, once he grows with you, he or she grows with you, basically also develops a huge amount of love and affection for the company and becomes more of a companion rather than an employee. So the aim is to basically find a companion and not a finance employee, an finance expert who becomes a companion in the startup journey of yours.
Amit, that's very thoughtful. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Amit Kumar, the co-founder of NoBroker. It's a pleasure talking to him, a lot of insight. And thank you for watching The Finance Story.